Captain Zektar of the Galactic Survey Corps had seen many worlds in his 40-year career. Gas giants with floating cities, crystal planets where thoughts became reality, and even worlds made entirely of living metal. But nothing had prepared him for the readings coming from the third planet of the Kepler 442 system. His scaled fingers trembled as they worked the control panel of his ship, the Voidwalker. The data streaming across his screens made no sense. According to every sensor, every scanner, and every piece of detection equipment on his vessel, the planet below was a Class 3 Deathworld, the most dangerous classification in the galaxy. "Computer, run the atmospheric analysis again," Zektar commanded, his voice carrying the weight of disbelief. The ship's artificial intelligence responded in its usual calm tone. Atmospheric composition confirmed. Oxygen content 21%, nitrogen 78%, trace gases 1%. Gravity is 1.2 standard units. Surface temperature ranges from -40 to +50 degrees Celsius. Classification: hostile to 97% of known galactic species. Zektar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep confusion among his people, the Vorthak. Class 3 Deathworlds were supposed to be empty. No intelligent life could possibly survive on such a hostile rock. The oxygen alone would be toxic to most species, and the wild temperature swings would kill anything that managed to breathe the poisonous air. Yet his long-range scanners were picking up something impossible. Massive structures dotted the planet's surface. Cities that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Energy signatures that suggested advanced technology. And most disturbing of all? Ships in orbit that his sensors couldn't quite lock onto, as if they were somehow hidden from his detection systems. "Sir," came a voice from behind him. Zektar turned to see his communications officer, a young Trilaxian named Veloth, approaching with obvious nervousness. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "Impossible," Zektar muttered. "Run a full diagnostic on the communications array." "I already did, sir, 3 times. The signal is definitely coming from down there." Veloth's tentacles writhed with anxiety. "But sir, the signal is using outdated galactic standard protocols. The kind we stopped using 50 years ago." Zektar felt his blood run cold. Outdated protocols meant one of 2 things. Either someone had been stranded on this death world for decades, which was impossible given the hostile environment, or something was very, very wrong. "Put it through," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, and Zektar had to grip his command chair to keep from falling over. The face looking back at him was unlike anything in the known galaxy. Smooth skin the color of light brown earth. Strange fur covering only the top of its head, and most unsettling of all, 2 forward-facing eyes that seemed to look directly into his soul. "Greetings, Captain Zektar of the Galactic Survey Corps," the creature said, its voice carrying an odd musical quality. "My name is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. Welcome to Earth." Zektar's translator implant struggled with some of the words. "Terran, Earth? These terms weren't in any galactic database." You know my name?" Zektar stammered. The human creature smiled, showing white pointed teeth that marked it clearly as a predator species. "We've been monitoring your approach for the past 6 hours. Your ship's identification beacon is quite clear, as is your mission profile. You're here to survey our system for potential colonization by the Galactic Federation. This was impossible. No species on a Class 3 Deathworld should have technology advanced enough to monitor Federation ships. The energy requirements alone would be staggering, not to mention the technical knowledge needed to decode Federation signals." "I don't understand," Zektar said slowly. "Our records show this system as uninhabited. How long have your people been here?" Admiral Chun's smile grew wider. "Oh, Captain, we've been here for about 200,000 years, give or take a few millennia." The bridge of the Voidwalker fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. 200,000 years was longer than most galactic civilizations had existed. It was longer than the Federation itself had been in existence. That's not possible," Zektar whispered. "Nothing can survive on a Class 3 Deathworld for that long. The environmental pressures alone would..." "Would what, Captain?" Chun interrupted, her tone becoming slightly colder. would force a species to become stronger, more adaptable, more creative in their solutions to survival? Zektar looked around his bridge at his crew. All of them were staring at the screen with the same mixture of fear and fascination that he felt. His science officer, a methodical Xanthari named Kixal, was frantically working at his station, presumably trying to make sense of the sensor readings. "Captain," Kixal called out, his voice tight with confusion, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures across the planet's surface. Power generation on a scale I've never seen. But sir, the energy readings don't match any known technology in our databases." Admiral Chun nodded approvingly. "Your science officer is very observant. We've had to develop our own solutions to the challenges of living on what you call a death world. 200,000 years of constant environmental pressure tends to make a species rather innovative." "What kind of innovations?" Zektar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Oh, the usual things," Chun said casually. "Fusion power, antimatter containment, quantum computing, faster-than-light communication, gravitational manipulation, the basics needed for survival on a hostile world." Each technology she mentioned was either theoretical or extremely advanced by Federation standards. Antimatter containment was still experimental among the most advanced Federation species. Gravitational manipulation was purely theoretical. Yet this human spoke of them as if they were simple tools. "Captain," his tactical officer, a heavily armored Kellyan named Turvash, spoke up from his station. "Sir, I'm reading something very strange. There are ships in orbit around the planet, but they're not showing up properly on our sensors. It's as if they're there but not there at the same time." June's expression shifted slightly, and for just a moment, Zektar thought he saw something predatory flicker across her features. "Ah, you've noticed our orbital defense platforms? Don't worry, Captain, they're not targeting you, yet. Defense platforms?" Zektar's voice cracked slightly. "How many?" "Oh, just a few thousand," Chun replied with the same casual tone she'd used to discuss antimatter technology. "Nothing too excessive. We've learned to be prepared for unexpected visitors." A few thousand orbital defense platforms around a single world was more firepower than most Federation fleets could muster. The largest Federation world Zektar knew of had maybe 50 defensive satellites. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding," Zektar said carefully. "We're not here as a threat. We're simply a survey vessel conducting routine exploration for potential Federation expansion." Admiral Chun leaned back in what appeared to be a command chair, though the technology behind her was unlike anything in Federation databases. Strange geometric patterns flowed across screens that seemed to be made of solid light, and creatures that might have been humans moved about in the background, performing tasks with fluid efficiency. "Oh, we know exactly why you're here, Captain," she said. "The Galactic Federation has been expanding steadily for the past 1,000 years, absorbing worlds and species into its collective. You survey worlds, determine their value, and then either invite their inhabitants to join or claim the worlds as uninhabited if no spacefaring civilization is found." Zektar felt his throat go dry. This human had just described the Federation's standard operating procedures with uncomfortable accuracy. Information that should have been classified at the highest levels. "How do you know about Federation protocols?" he asked. "We've been watching you for quite some time," Chun replied. "Your Federation isn't the only group of species in this galaxy, Captain. Some of us have simply chosen to remain independent." The implications of her words hit Zektar like a physical blow. An independent spacefaring civilization that had been watching the Federation without being detected. A civilization that had survived on a death world for hundreds of thousands of years. A civilization with technology that seemed to surpass anything the Federation had developed. "What do you want from us?" he asked. Admiral Chun's smile returned, but it held a different quality now. Something that made Zektar's instincts scream warnings about predators and prey. "That's a very good question, Captain," she said. "But I think the better question is, what does the Galactic Federation want with our world?" Before Zektar could respond, his sensors officer called out in alarm. "Captain, we're being scanned." But sir, I can't identify the scanning method or its source. On the screen, Admiral Chun nodded. Don't worry, we're just taking a closer look at your technology. Very interesting design philosophy your Federation uses. Quite efficient for your purposes, though I noticed several vulnerabilities that could be exploited if someone wanted to disable your systems. Zektar felt ice forming in his stomach. Are you threatening us? Not at all, Captain, Chun replied smoothly. I'm simply making an observation. Your shields, for instance, operate on a rotating frequency modulation designed to disperse energy weapons fire. The silence on the bridge of the Void Walker stretched until Zektar thought it might snap something vital in his mind. Admiral Chun waited patiently on the screen, her alien features calm and composed while his entire crew fought to process what they had just learned. Computer, Zektar said quietly, send a priority message to Federation Command. Full encryption. Tell them we've made contact with an unknown spacefaring species. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Captain, Admiral Chun said before his computer could respond, Zektar's 4 eyes focused on the screen. What do you mean? We've temporarily disrupted your faster-than-light communication array, she explained matter-of-factly. Nothing permanent, of course. We simply need to have this conversation without Federation interference. His communications officer's tentacles were working frantically over his console. She's right, Captain. I can't get a signal out. But, sir, I don't understand how they're blocking us. There's no jamming signal, no interference pattern. It's as if our quantum communicator simply stopped working. Zektar felt the walls of his ship closing in around him. They were cut off from the Federation, alone with a species that had technology beyond anything he'd ever imagined. What do you want? He asked again, his voice barely steady. To talk, Shung replied. Your Federation has been expanding for 1,000 years, Captain. Absorbing worlds, integrating species, building what you call a galactic community. But you've never encountered anything like us. She gestured to something off-screen, and the view shifted to show the planet below. What Zektar saw made his breath catch in his throat. The cities were vast beyond belief, sprawling metropolises that covered entire continents. Towers reached toward space itself, connected by bridges that spanned hundreds of kilometers. And everywhere he could see movement, activity on a scale that suggested billions of inhabitants. 200,000 years ago, Shun continued, our ancestors were barely more than animals, hunting and gathering on the plains of Africa. But this world, this beautiful, terrible world you call a Deathworld, it shaped us. Every drought taught us to plan ahead. Every ice age taught us to innovate. Every disaster that should have destroyed us only made us stronger. The image shifted to show vast orbital installations surrounding the planet. Space stations the size of small moons, connected by streams of ships that moved in perfect coordination. Manufacturing platforms that seemed to be building more structures even as he watched. While your Federation was learning to live among the stars by finding worlds that were safe and comfortable, we were learning to master our own world. We didn't leave Earth because we had to, Captain. We reached for space because we wanted to. Zektar's science officer was recording everything, his instruments working overtime to analyze what they were seeing. Captain, Kixal whispered, the power outputs I'm reading are impossible. Some of those orbital stations are generating more energy than our entire home system produces. Admiral Chun smiled at that. Tell me, Captain, what does your Federation know about warfare? The question seemed to come from nowhere, and Zektar felt his survival instincts screaming warnings. The Federation is a peaceful alliance. We've had conflicts, certainly, but major wars are rare. Most disputes are settled through negotiation or economic pressure. Peaceful, Chun repeated thoughtfully. How wonderful for you. Unfortunately, peace was never an option for us. Our world tried to kill us every day for 200,000 years. Our weather, our geology, our biology, even our fellow humans. We learned warfare not from choice, but from necessity. The screen shifted again, and Zektar saw something that made his blood freeze. Ships, thousands upon thousands of ships, arranged in perfect formation around the planet. But these weren't exploration vessels or cargo haulers. They were warships, sleek and predatory, bristling with weapon systems he couldn't identify. "Those are just our home defense fleet," Chun said casually. "Each ship is crewed by humans who were born and raised in the depths of space, trained from childhood in combat tactics that were developed over thousands of years of constant warfare." "Would you like to know how many ships we have, Captain?" Zektar didn't want to know, but he found himself nodding anyway. "Approximately 2 million active warships in our home fleet alone. Another 8 million in our exploration and colony defense fleets scattered across this arm of the galaxy. Each ship designed to fight and win against odds that would make your Federation tacticians weep." The numbers were insane. The entire Federation military consisted of perhaps 50,000 ships spread across hundreds of worlds. This single human world claimed to have more ships than the entire Federation by a factor of 20. "That's impossible," Tervash, his tactical officer, spoke up. "No single world could support that many ships. The resource requirements alone would be impossible for most species," Chun agreed. "But remember, we've had 200,000 years to figure out how to make the impossible routine. We've mined our asteroids, our outer planets, even our sun itself. We've built manufacturing facilities that exist in higher dimensions where space and time work differently. We've learned to take matter and energy and reshape them at the quantum level." She paused, her expression becoming more serious. "But ships and weapons are not why we've remained hidden from your Federation, Captain. We've stayed hidden because we've been watching, learning, evaluating whether your expansion represents a threat to human interests." "The Federation doesn't threaten anyone," Zektar protested. "We offer membership, trade, protection, technological advancement. Worlds benefit from joining us." "Do they?" Chun asked quietly. "Tell me about the Zephyrian system." Zektar felt as if he'd been punched. The Zephyrian system had been absorbed into the Federation 15 years ago, after their government had been found guilty of violating Federation environmental protocols. The population had been relocated to preserve the ecosystem. "That was different," he said weakly. "The Zephyrians were destroying their world's biosphere. Federation intervention saved millions of species. By relocating the Zephyrians to labor colonies and turning their world into a nature preserve for Federation tourists," Chun replied coldly. "Tell me about the Calderon hegemony." Another punch to his consciousness. The Calderon hegemony had been a militaristic society that had refused Federation membership. They had been embargoed until their economy collapsed, then offered Federation aid in exchange for integration. "The Caldarans chose warfare over peace," Zektar said. But his voice lacked conviction. "The Caldarans chose independence," Chun corrected. "They were punished for that choice." "Shall I continue, Captain?" "I have records of 47 similar cases over the past 300 years. Species that were absorbed, relocated, or eliminated because they didn't fit the Federation's vision of galactic harmony." Zektar wanted to argue, to defend the Federation's actions, but the weight of history was crushing. Every case she mentioned had been classified as a successful integration or a necessary intervention. He'd never thought to question whether the species involved had agreed. "What do you want from us?" he asked for the third time. Admiral Chun leaned forward in her chair. "I want you to go back to your Federation, Captain. I want you to tell them exactly what you've seen here. I want you to inform them that humanity exists, that we control not just this system, but dozens of others, and that we've been watching them. And then we wait to see how they respond," she said simply. "Will they try to negotiate with us as equals? Will they attempt to integrate us into their Federation? Will they try to eliminate us as a threat?" The implications were staggering. If the humans were telling the truth about their capabilities, they represented a power greater than the Federation itself. A power that had been hidden, watching, evaluating. "Why reveal yourselves now?" Zektar asked. "Because your Federation is approaching the boundaries of human space," Chun replied. "In approximately 50 years, assuming your current expansion rate, you'll reach systems that we consider strategically important. We prefer to resolve potential conflicts before they become actual conflicts. You're threatening war? Admiral Chun's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes made Zektar wish he hadn't asked the question. Captain, we are a species that spent 200,000 years fighting for survival against a world that tried to kill us every single day. We are a species that turned warfare into an art form out of pure necessity. We are a species that has never lost a war because losing meant extinction. She stood, and despite her small stature compared to most Federation species, she seemed to fill the entire screen. We are not threatening war, Captain. We are simply informing you that if war comes, we will be ready for it. We will be more ready than your Federation can possibly imagine. The screen shifted one final time, and Zektar saw something that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. A massive structure in space, larger than most moons, bristling with weapons that seemed to bend space itself around their barrels. And around it, hundreds of similar structures, each one capable of destroying entire star systems. Those are our peacekeeping stations, Chun said quietly. We built them to ensure that no conflict ever reaches Earth itself. Each one is capable of sterilizing a solar system if necessary. We currently have them positioned. Federation Command had never seen anything like Captain Zektar's report. In the 3 days since his return from the Kepler 442 system, the highest levels of Federation government had been in constant emergency session. The Grand Council chambers on Centauri. Prime buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from over 300 species debated what to do about the humans. Counselor Vexari of the Altarian Collective stood at the central podium, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated extreme stress. The data provided by Captain Zektar has been verified by our best analysts. The technology readings, the energy signatures, the orbital structures, all of it checks out. We are facing a civilization that possesses capabilities beyond our current understanding. High Chancellor Mordic, the ancient leader of the Federation, slowly rose from his position at the Council's apex. His species, the Eternal Builders, had helped found the Federation over 1,000 years ago, and his voice carried the weight of centuries. The humans present us with an unprecedented situation, he began, his words carefully measured. Never in Federation history have we encountered a species that has developed in complete isolation to such an advanced state while remaining hidden from our sensors. Counselor Tishal of the Military Defense Committee slammed one of her 6 arms against her desk. Hidden? They weren't hidden, they were watching us. This Admiral Chun knew classified Federation protocols. She described our ship designs, our tactics, our expansion history. How long have they been spying on us? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If the humans had been observing the Federation for extended periods, then every major Federation decision over the past decades might have been made under enemy surveillance. We need to consider the possibility, came a quiet voice from the diplomatic section, that they're not our enemies at all. All eyes turned to Counselor Zindar of the Pacifist Alliance. Her species, the Harmony Seekers, had joined the Federation specifically to avoid conflict, and they were known for their ability to find peaceful solutions to impossible problems. Think about what we know, she continued. These humans have technology superior to ours. They have military capabilities that dwarf our own. They've been watching us for years, possibly decades. And yet, when first contact was made, they chose to talk rather than attack. They could have destroyed Captain Zektar's ship without effort, but instead they sent a diplomatic message. Chancellor Mordic nodded slowly. An interesting perspective, but we must also consider that their message contained clear threats. This Admiral Chun spoke of war preparations and system-destroying weapons. She spoke of readiness, Zindar corrected. There's a difference between threatening aggression and demonstrating the ability to defend oneself. Counselor Vexari's light patterns shifted to indicate skepticism. Defense? They have millions of warships. No species needs that level of force for mere defense. Unless, came another voice, they face threats we can't imagine. The speaker was Counselor Cretan of the Historical Research Division. His people, the Memory Keepers, were the Federation's experts on galactic history and extinct civilizations. I've been analyzing the humans' claims about their development, he continued. 200,000 years of constant warfare and environmental pressure. If they're telling the truth, then they represent something unique in galactic history. A species that achieved interstellar capability not through peaceful development, but through constant struggle. That makes them dangerous, Tyshul interjected. That makes them survivors, Cretan replied. And survivors have different priorities than conquerors. The debate continued for hours, but Chancellor Mordick could see that the council was dividing into three distinct factions. The military representatives wanted immediate action to neutralize the human threat. The diplomatic corps wanted to open formal negotiations, and the research divisions wanted time to study and understand human capabilities. Finally, the Chancellor called for order. We need more information before we can make any decisions. I'm authorizing a formal diplomatic mission to the human system. Sir, Tyshul objected, that could be walking into a trap. If they're hostile, then a military response would only prove their hostility justified, the Chancellor replied firmly. We will send Ambassador Kolveth and a small diplomatic vessel. No weapons, no military escort, just a peaceful attempt at communication. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Kolveth found himself approaching the human system in the Federation, diplomatic vessel Harmony's Voice, as a member of the Wise Counselors, a species known for their emotional stability and diplomatic skills. Kolveth had negotiated dozens of successful first contact situations, but none of them had prepared him for what he was seeing. The humans hadn't lied about their capabilities. If anything, they had understated them. The orbital infrastructure around Earth was mind-boggling in its scope and complexity. Manufacturing platforms the size of small planets worked continuously, producing ships and equipment at a rate that suggested the entire system was essentially one massive industrial complex. Incoming. Transmission, his communications. Officer announced. The main screen activated, showing the same human admiral that Captain Zektar had encountered. But this time she was not alone. Behind her stood figures that were clearly from different human subspecies or groups, each adapted to different environments. Some were taller and thinner, suggesting low-gravity adaptation. Others were stockier and more muscular, possibly from high-gravity worlds. All of them watched the screen with the focused attention of predators evaluating potential threats. Ambassador Kolveth, Admiral Chun said, her pronunciation of his name perfect despite the complex vowel combinations. Welcome to the Sol System. I trust your journey was comfortable? It was, Admiral Chun. Thank you for your courtesy in allowing our approach. Chun smiled. We appreciate the Federation's decision to send a diplomatic mission rather than a military one. It suggests a wisdom that we were hoping to see. The Federation values peaceful solutions to complex problems, Kolveth replied carefully. We're here to better understand your people and hopefully establish a foundation for positive relations. Excellent. I've prepared a comprehensive briefing for you about human civilization, our history, and our current capabilities. But before we begin, there's something I need to know. She leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming serious. What are the Federation's long-term plans for galactic expansion? The question was direct and potentially sensitive, but Kolveth had been briefed to be as honest as possible. The Federation seeks to eventually unite all spacefaring species in a galaxy-wide alliance. We believe that cooperation and shared knowledge benefit everyone. And species that prefer to remain independent? Kolveth felt the weight of the question. The Federation respects the right of species to self-determination. However, we also believe that isolation ultimately leads to stagnation and conflict. History shows that independent species eventually either join the galactic community or fall behind technologically and culturally. Admiral Chung was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. An honest answer. I appreciate your directness, Ambassador. Now let me be equally direct with you. The screen shifted to show a star map of the local galactic arm. Hundreds of systems were highlighted in different colors. The blue systems are under direct human control, Chun explained. The green systems contain human colonies or outposts. The yellow systems are under human protection as independent allies. The red systems are quarantined due to dangerous phenomena or hostile entities. Kolveth stared at the map in shock. There were thousands of marked systems representing a space empire larger than the Federation itself. We've been expanding for over 50,000 years, Chun continued. But our expansion has been different from yours. We don't absorb other species. We don't integrate unwilling populations. We establish colonies where we're welcome, we protect allies who ask for protection, and we leave everyone else alone. The quarantine systems? Kolveth asked. Chun's expression darkened. Ambassador, the galaxy is not the safe place your Federation believes it to be. There are things out there that would destroy your entire civilization without a second thought. Entities that exist in higher dimensions, machines left behind by dead civilizations, biological plagues that can rewrite reality itself. She gestured to the red zones on the map. These are areas where such threats have been contained or neutralized. We've been fighting them for millennia, keeping them from spreading to inhabited regions of the galaxy. Why haven't you shared this information with the Federation? Because your Federation has a tendency to try to solve problems through committee, one of the other humans spoke up. This one appeared to be adapted for space living with enlarged lungs and modified bone structure. Some threats require immediate, decisive action, the kind that democratic processes aren't good at providing. Admiral Chun nodded. Colonel Reynolds makes a valid point. We've watched the Federation deal with crises. You form committees, you debate, you negotiate. Sometimes that works wonderfully. But when you're facing something that wants to eat your entire species, you need to shoot first and hold the committee meeting afterward. Are you saying the Federation is incompetent? Kolveth asked, trying.